psychological, political, and sociocultural analyses that provide examples that arm you with some facts, some data, and some formulas to deploy to your life to better get your eyes on the prize and find your fulfillment. For today's topic, I decided to start a little bit of a special here. I'm going to call it the Iran Cope Watch because this is sort of like the right-wing version to me of the Charlie Kirk assassination, wherein I am certain that I don't want to fucking talk to cope theorists anymore. Trump cope theorists, magatards, Trump cope derangement syndrome havers. I'm done. I'm over it. I don't want to fucking hear it anymore. There's just no excuse anymore. There's no debate to be had. There's no technicalities. There's no rationalizations. I've had a fucking enough. Every single Trump magatard cope theorist who last time there was an Iran war swore up and down, it's not a big deal. It's a freaking heckin' fast thing because our military is so heckin' awesome. And I knew that it was a crock of shit because the nucleus of the conflict was yet to be resolved, which was the centralized deal. Iran wants to hedge their nuclear capability to deter Israel and the United States because Israel and the United States has systematically toppled every fucking regime in every country in the region. So what's a way to deter that? And what's the only fucking way to keep their sovereignty is to hedge nuclearly, meaning that they maintain the capability to enrich uranium and they maintained a stockpile, but they didn't necessarily build a bomb per se. And so last year, the fundamental problem was yet to be resolved, even though they claim that they bombed the nuclear facilities. Which, isn't it ironic? Because they're saying, oh, Iran's going to pursue a bomb. What happened to that utter defeat last year? Wherein we bombed their nuclear facilities to total oblivion and it was a total victory. So the nexus of the conflict was yet to be resolved because there's three parties. The U.S. wants nuclear non-proliferation, Iran wants to exist and survive, and Israel wants the regime changed and wants them BTFO'd. So we're going to start a series here. I'm going to get into the politics another time, but this time I want to talk about the myth of American military dominance because for those of you who don't know, I am a Army veteran. I wasn't a cool guy. I didn't do combat or anything. I spent 3 years in garrison. I have a total of 30 combined flight hours on the unmanned aerial vehicle known as the Shadow RQ-7 Bravo V2, and we'll get into shortly why there's a V2. But nevertheless, that was 3 years of some real fucking insight about what the daily operation of the military is like and what the lowest possible fucking standards are. And I'll tell you shortly about how everyone there is a fucking retard. And as a matter of fact, me and my friends, we had an ongoing joke whenever we were in the car ride. Because every fucking day there'd be some new, silly, ridiculous thing where we'd watch the NCOs be like the most spurg spazzes about the most obsequious, juvenile thing. And we were like looking around to each other and we're like, how is this not like fucking well known across the country that the military is actually fucking retarded? So I imagine somebody seething right now, anybody who watches this, because I've had some seethers in my replies. You're not American, and this is a problem of this idea that we have to American sycophantile identify ourselves with homoeroticism for the military, or else what exactly? Like, this is the operative teleology of a baby who lives in a baby space wherein everything to them is about baby mammal brain needs, and they think that emotional support for the military is going to translate to some kind of better performance because that's what works for them, because they're babies who need their little baby good jobs from their mommies and daddies. So let me not get too far ahead of myself there. I did the lights here. I did a little special lights. I did a U.S. flag and Iran flag. It doesn't quite come out the way because I have to have the lights for my face here and everything. So I'll be messing around with that. So before we begin, you know what to do. Marchese Maxers, like, subscribe, retweet, all this stuff. I hate saying it, but I guess you have to say it. I guess it just reminds people. I guess, not to shit on everybody, but I guess they need that. You can head on over to marchesemethods.com for one-on-one coaching and or based therapy, where we go over all of your confusing thoughts, feelings, and behaviors and navigate them such that you arrive at a better place of joy, fulfillment, confidence, and peace. I have my official hoodie there as well. You can DM me or email me, marchesemethods@proton.me, for my Discord. For $5 a month, you can get unlimited text help from me, and maybe that sometimes even turns into a voice call or something. I can't seem to help myself sometimes, but help people out. Moreover, finally, I have super chats up on Streamlab. If you're on Twitter, try to find my YouTube and all of that, because on Twitter, the little stream description thing doesn't come out. It only comes out on YouTube and Rumble there, and it's like a wonky link. So, assidedly, you can also tip me on my X profile. You just go to X and you see the upper right corner there. I have Cash App and Bitcoin available. So that's all of our shilling here. So let's get started with this. I usually do a psychoanalysis, but let me just go through all the facts and data here. And I want to start with this idea of the American exceptional standards and competence. So our side of the internet seems to be well aware that the military is like a bunch of retards and it's brown daycare, except for when it's like a gay, homoerotic, neoconservative operation. Suddenly, it's how freaking heckin' awesome and based and tough and alpha our military is. But let's examine that idea. And let's start with this eroticism over the standards and competence. So for starters, what are the requirements? Perhaps I'll just give you a little bit, too, about my time in the military. I spent 3 years. It was originally a 6-year contract because it was aviation, but I rejected the COVID vaccine. And long story short, I rejected it religiously, but that held me up because those go all the way up to the Pentagon, so I was stuck for a year, essentially. And then finally, when it came back rejected, I outright refused. By that time, they were rescinding that mandate, but the Army had a special provision for people like me who were getting out, and I got out under Chapter 15, Secretarial Plenary Authority, which means that during some kind of political circumstance like that, you can essentially ask the Secretary of the Army to kick you out. And so that was what I did, full honorable discharge and whatever, as if that... So many people are so dumb about that too. They think they don't even know what the fuck they're talking about. You have to try, essentially, to get like a bad discharge. So now my time in, I hated every second of it. I wanted out right away. I was finding legalistic paperwork everywhere and anywhere to try to find my way out. And the COVID vaccine provided the opportunity. But let me just explain something to you. This idea that the military... And this goes for all the fucking branches. Don't cope about any of the other branches. You're all a bunch of fucking dorks with this. These are dorks. These are people with low self-esteem who enter the military. And I know this sounds Freud-tarded and like Barnes & Noble psychology, but it's real. These are castration-anxious dorks. These are people who never arrived at any sense of confidence or something like that. And in particular, they never arrived there because what do you need to arrive at confidence? You need discipline. You need to sequester your impulses and pleasures and all of that. And you need to pursue your higher order, your better self. And this has a special place in the constellation of masculinity because what is it? It's sovereignty. It's beating your feelings. And what does that mean? You answer to yourself. You answer to yourself. That means you're not answering to other people, and other people can answer to you. It establishes leadership, whatever. And it establishes congruence, and you're not so susceptible to the influences of others and or the influences they place upon your emotions and your neurotransmitters. So now the problem is that fucking sucks, and the little lizard brain tells you to optimize energy instead. So what do cope theorists do? Cope theorists, like many of these magatards, resolve to rationalize their ideal self away, or rationalize the standards, or rationalize that they've met the standards, so that they can maintain their indulgence and their indolence. And so, sure enough, what's the military? It has this imagery of tough guy, whatever. And so people sign up and they figure, if I'm categorically in the military, then I'm free from any guilt and responsibility because, well, necessarily to wear that uniform, I have to be such a fucking tough guy and I have to be so disciplined and all of that. And what are some of the ways they try to bolster that feeling? Because when you operate in this cope theory, the feelings subside and the feelings of low self-esteem and guilt bubble up because you can't fucking hide from yourself and you can't hide from your super ego, who you're supposed to be. And so that bubbles up. So what do they need to do? They need to press it back down with some kind of other feeling. So what they do is insert this obsequious adherence to every gay little rule and working hard and putting on a front like they work hard. Like you could see it in their body language, the way that these fucking dorks prance around real fast and all like tough guys and yelling and hooting and hollering. And they also do that as a hedge. They do that as a hedge because here's the big secret that we'll start with. The fitness standards are a fucking joke. None of them fucking work out. None of them so much as try to fucking work out. And half the time, you don't even have an official plan for the working out on your time and everything. On your unit's time, during your workday. And so they hedge by, well, if I adhere super strongly to the work we have to do today, Freudian slip, today, if I over adhere to that, that makes up for, that excuses me from the fitness stuff. Because, you know, oh, dude, we can't do that fitness stuff. Like, we got bigger taskings right now. Dude, the commander's like telling us we got to do this, that. So I got to be more, I got to be disciplined. You know, that working out stuff, that's kind of like a side. That's kind of like for pussies. You know, that, like, they play that game of like how people will try to portray anybody who goes to the gym as like vain or useless or has too much free time or something like that. And so that's how they hedge. Now let's talk about the actual standards. For starters, you're supposed to work out every morning at 6:30. But God for fucking bid you ever so much as think of coming remotely close to not spending the first half fucking hour of doing gay little stretches. This is what they do. This is an ongoing joke amongst everyone who knows it's kind of gay. You know, oh, but and then it's, you know, the bend and reach, and then it's 1, 2, 3. These slow chores that, stretches that take literally a fucking half hour. What happens thereafter? You have about 40 minutes or so to fucking la-di-da, do-da-day, hop, skip, and jumperoo around a parking lot in the half-ass gym that everyone's fucking in, so nobody's lifting weights really. And they decide that, you know, oh, let's go for a run or let's do a ruck march. They're obsessed with the fucking ruck marches. They LARP that's so tough or something because it's just kind of uncomfortable. But that's what you do when you're a low IQ or you're just a baby and you know you're a baby, but you want to LARP and convince yourself that you're subjecting yourself to discomfort, therefore it's necessarily better, but it's not metabolic discomfort. It's just, you know, aching from walking or something like that. And I don't know who needs to fucking hear this, but rucking around, you could ruck all the doodah day, but that won't get you fucking big or sexed up or jacked or anything like that. And of course, God for fucking bid, anybody lifts weights. They never wanted to lift weights. They would tell me I'm in charge of PT, and I'd say, okay, we're lifting fucking weights at 5 a.m., faggots. And somehow that couldn't work. That couldn't be allowed. Or, oh, we got too much to do. Oh, let's do this, let's do that. And I had to listen to them because they were NCOs. Now, I will say, too, in case any of my old friends are watching, all my NCOs are good guys, at least the immediate NCOs and everything. But, you know, this is the structure that happens. This is the structure that goes, whether it's me or the unit that I was in or anybody's unit. So, it's these fucking rinky-dink workouts if they even fucking do them. So half the time they skip them in the morning because we got bigger taskings. And they cope by saying, well, you know, PT is supposed to be maintenance. You know, you're supposed to be working out on your own time. And they sort of say it with this smugness, like as fucking if they're above anybody who wanted the PT to be like a serious training, because they're making like, oh, you're being lazy for not wanting to work out after work or outside of the working hours. But it's like, you don't fucking do that either, faggot. None of them ever fucking would. None of them worked out on their own time. Want to know how I know? Because I was at the fucking gym on my own time all the day, and so were my friends. So this is another version of that psychological game of they're going to rationalize, oh, you know, he's being a pussy because he wants to work out for real during the working hours, but you need to be doing this and a real workout thereafter, as fucking if any of them would ever come remotely close to doing that. Now, finally, with the physical fitness standards, let's talk about what are the actual standards. What's the test? So the test implemented the past like 5 or so years, it's called the ACFT, the Army Combat Fitness Test. Other branches have their other ones. It's all virtually the same shit. But you want to know what the minimum for fucking push-ups is on the ACFT? It's 10 to be in the Army. Now, cope theorists are going to be like, well, I bet that's not the standard for the infantry. The infantry standard is like fucking 15 to 20. The infantry standard is roughly maybe like 20% more of any of the given things. You could look it up, ACFT chart, and it'll tell you like, oh, combat, the minimum for combat operations or combat MOSs is roughly 20% more on almost everything. Let's also talk about, I have an itch on my leg. Looks like I'm fucking scratching my ass here or something. It's always funny, you're live in front of people, you know you're in front of people, but it just totally feels like you're talking to yourself, you're talking to a camera to yourself. You have to like remember that you have a camera on you live, so you don't like, you know, do something weird or gross with the camera on. So anyway, these bare minimums are a fucking joke. Now, just look at every soldier, because this imagery, what's the imagery? The imagery is that they're all sexed up freak beasts. And I always talk about this with the Marchese methods, Marchese maxing, Marchese muscle, health, and half-ass fucking workouts. You all know that's not what you want to be. You want to be sexed up freak beast. You don't want to cope. You're not going to fucking cope yourself into oblivion about, oh, too big this, and oh, well, optimal that. Oh, well, that's not a healthy actually. Oh, well, I don't have time for that. You fucking know that's a crock of shit with the cope, because you know that above all else, the exercise of getting what's proverbially too big and sexed up has nothing to do with the actual fucking utility. And it has everything to do with sovereignty, with the exercise of discipline that goes well beyond just fucking half-assing at the gym and pretending like you're doing something uncomfortable. Having a serious pursuit, taking it all the way as far as you could take it, and subjecting yourself to the metabolic effort. And let me just tell you, it's not that fucking uncomfortable to lift weights, actually, especially if you do it training size and strength. You might have seen me tweet about this several times. You operate with weight where the most you could get is roughly 6 to 8 reps. You're training both strength and size, such that you're not doing this like homoerotic lactic acid burnout, but you also can feel when you're about to fail. And so that's sufficiently challenging, and it gets you bigger and stronger. So none of these people are fucking doing that. And none of these bare minimums count towards that. So let's think about what those bare minimums are. And because that is, there's this low IQ thing of comparison of value, wherein people keep doing this low IQ thing where if you're in the minority, it's necessarily excellence. Okay, so the military standards are indeed a minority that only say, let's say 5%, maybe even, let's be generous even, and say 1% of the population can do. A cope, I had no idea she was in here. She's going to keep trying to jump up. The cope, I had the doors closed. This is so irksome. This is such an aura-lot of freaking awa. I waft all my awa. But that's whiteness. That's what you do when you're Aryan. You take care of animals. Let's see. I'll let her sit here if she doesn't nudge me too much. So this low IQ thing of the standards is, oh, okay, well, 1% of the populace can meet these standards. So therefore, if I meet these standards, I'm excellent. Excused from working out, excused from guilt, and all this stuff. You are not fucking intrinsically and transcendentally excellent. A simple analogy is if you got a 30 on the engineering test, but everyone else got a 20, you don't get to say, oh, I'm a smarty pants because the standards, blah, 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 and comparative to everybody else, I reigned as the top standards, you're still a fucking idiot that failed and you still don't get the material well enough. So similarly, if you're in the top 1% of the population in fitness, I'm contemplating, I'm contemplating carrying her out here, but I don't want to leave the set. And so, therefore I'm excused. But you are not sexed up. You are a fucking frail bitch. It's like, the 315 thing a few weeks ago. Fucking probably 1% of the population can bench 185. A number of us have been into the gym. Does 185 seem to be fucking impressive? Does 185 translate to having a sexed up fucking chest and physique and everything? No. So that's the problem with the physical standards. And some cope with the infantry has more time to work out and everything like this. I knew guys that were former infantry. They said it was all the same shit, just doing fucking chores all day instead of workouts. And their workouts were just gay ruck marches, as if in like 2026 that's like necessary. So now let's get to the intellectual and competence standards. So this one's going to be long. 20 minutes in, that's like the first bullet point of the first header here. So, but perhaps I'll speed myself up, get in my flow here. Now, the ASVAB, the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. Let me explain something to you. The minimum for most of the services is roughly score in the 33rd percentile. You have to be like, it's a miracle you can even read if you score 33% on the ASVAB. Now, cope theorists will counter that with, who cares, or what does it matter, because some people need to be dumb to do like the dumb jobs like infantry or something like that, and they have minimums for different jobs and all of that. They sure do, but those minimums do not fucking filter out idiots, actually. And this is part of the important point of the understanding of competence, because why does everyone really think the American military is the most dominant in the world? It's this psychosocial, emotional thing of, they're necessarily subject to these like standards, and there's this emotional resilience imagery, and it's the emotional resilience of withstanding your friends dying or something like that, withstanding combat. And the hunter-gatherer little peanut brain presumes that necessarily implies every version of competence or intellect and all of these things, if you can stay calm amidst like intense circumstances. But it's clear that even amidst that, that's not what fucking competence is. And these people aren't emotionally resilient. They're giant fucking babies, actually. They're babied their entire time in the military, and they're also babies, as I said, because they can't seem to get over themselves with the obsequious over-identification with faux discipline, and they can't grow up and get to the gym for fucking real. So now, even with the layers of competence or the layers of testing for specific jobs and everything for officers and everything, essentially, I've looked at the ASVAB translations and everything of IQ and all that. You have to essentially be a midwit to be able to be an officer. Now, fair enough, the military cannot be too selective, because it's a huge country. You need bodies more than anything else. But isn't that interesting? You need bodies more than anything else rather than competence. Why is that so? Because competence barely fucking does anything with regard to the military. Because war is chaos. No amount of fucking being a smarty pants and being emotionally resilient is going to stop a bullet from flying through your fucking head, idiot. It's not like they can teach you how to dodge bullets or this sort of thing. So, yeah, they need bodies, but that they operate on we need bodies instructs the nature of the operations of war, which is that it's chaos, and it's not always very clear where it goes. There's just these very basic, raw, heuristic probabilities that your little baby peanut low IQ brains love to fucking operate on. She's gonna jump right up again, I know it. And so, the competence standards and the IQ standards are a joke. And this is what I've been saying. It's like, oh, the military's brown daycare to the beast, fascist, racist goyim. But then suddenly when it's, homoerotic regime change war for Israel, then it's epic, freaking smarty pants. They're all freaking badass. Now let's talk about the training specifically. So the basic training, and somebody's going to cope with infantry training. Similar story. It's all the same fucking shtick of emotional resilience training. That's the entire theme of basic training and even your advanced training. My advanced training was about the drones. It was 16 weeks. It was checklist this and identifying aircraft from pictures or whatever. But the entire time they were more preoccupied with like huffing and puffing at you for your uniform being out of place and this emotional resilience thing of you got to be disciplined and follow the rules and this sort of thing. But their gay little emotional game theory, or excuse me, transaction analysis psychology there was this sort of, oh, you're a pussy, oh, quit being a pussy, this sort of thing. Which, sure enough, a number of people need that. But once again, it's another low IQ valuation. You cross the categorical threshold of being in the military. That doesn't necessarily mean you're not categorically a pussy. You're just less of a pussy than most people. And not even most people at that point. Life challenges you significantly more than the fucking military life. The only thing about the military that actually challenges your emotional disposition is actual combat. But even then, I hate saying that because it feels like it encourages dork, idiot, faggots who want to go fucking fight wars to play tough guy. It challenges you and it roughens you up, but it's not like a good thing. It's sort of like cutting your leg off to like train yourself to do well with pain. Like that's the point at which you're like, dude, like what is the utility here? There is actually a utility to be balanced with the sovereignty. But don't take that and run with it to cope and say, well, it's not very utilitarian to get too big. Shut the fuck up. So the basic training, it's all about emotional resilience. And you're just fucking LARPing. You're just LARPing in a tent, not even a tent. You're LARPing in the forest. You're LARPing. You go shoot a handful of times, which isn't all that fucking impressive of a training type thing. And then you never really fucking do it again throughout your military career. Because you got like gay taskings and chores to do. I'll say we've moved on from the physical fitness standards, but I think I kind of already alluded to this point. It's only considered high standards because it's comparative to fat retards, and the entire populace are fat retards. Half-ass working out 3 times a week is like, whoa, high freaking standards to the rest of the population. Yeah. Comparatively, yes. Intrinsically, no. So, now I've alluded to daily life a couple times. So let's talk about the daily life of being in the Army, being in the military, whatever. Here's just like a day in the life of a U.S. Army soldier. You know, my dad would always call me and joke around. He'd be like, "What the fuck do you do all day?" And I'd say, "Dude, I literally don't know." So here's what you do. Let's just go with the PT thing. PT. Hey, you guys doing PT? Just even hearing the way that they would like, be so concerned whether or not we're doing that so that they know whether they're emotionally prepared for the god-awful fucking torture of half-ass push-ups. So, you show up at 6:30 in your PTs, your physical training uniform. You do your gay little warm-up. It takes like roughly an hour and a half. You do stretches, you do announcements. Then you go, you shower, change, whatever, in your barracks, and then you go to breakfast. Breakfast is from 8 to 9:30. Sometimes your unit sort of tells you to just show up at 9. Sometimes it's 9:30. Now, on Monday, it's Motor Pool Freaking Monday, and every other branch presumably has their version of this. So you do your gay little squadron or battalion level formation at the motor pool. The command sergeant major circle jerks himself with some sort of tough guy lecture, and the battalion commander says, "Oh, you guys have been doing a great job, blah, blah, blah. Let's do this motor pool stuff for the day." So then you go and do what's called a 5988. It's an inspection form. On this inspection form, you half-ass inspect the Humvees. You kick the tire, you check the lights, whatever. Every fucking week, there's at least one of them that's due for a weekly or whatever, an annual, monthly, whatever it is, dispatch. So what's the process? You go to the motor pool staff, the people whose MOS, occupational specialty, is being a car mechanic, essentially, and you go to them and you ask them to do their version of a check. And so they check, they look, blah, blah, blah. And now on Monday, every fucking company or troop, I was in a cavalry unit, so we call it troop, whatever. Every company or troop is trying to do the same thing. So there's lines fucking out the door of Humvees and people trying to get this done, and all of the bays are filled up with vehicles that they're fixing still from fucking last week. So you do a circle jerk like that. So you're waiting it out, and then they tell you to fuck off, and they usually go on their gay little lunch, or they close at like 3 p.m. This is all going on until 11:30. 11:30 is their gay little lunch, your gay little lunch. It's an hour and a half long. Okay, so you have an hour and a half long, no exceptions. That's like the biggest deal to encroach upon the lunch break and this sort of thing. So you show back up at 1 o'clock. You try to get a hold of the motor pool, whatever. They close at 3 because they have a gay little training or some sort of gay little thing they have to do. So you're waiting around. You're also trying to do some kind of other chore. There's something we got to find. There's something we got to do with our equipment. Some guys are helping set up for a flight, this sort of thing. And for some reason, that we can always never fly. It's always the weather, or it's always something goes wrong with the equipment. Other times you have like personal bureaucratic paperwork to do with the financial office or the whatever offices, but they always close their door, and they close at like 1 o'clock. So you spend all day essentially trying to beg some of these people to ask to help you, and then they don't help you. And you spend the final, and then around like 4:30, you return back to where your unit sort of operates, their offices, and meet up, and you do some kind of debrief, gay little announcements or whatever. And then they release you at 5. The dining facility opens at 5. It's from 5 to 6:30. And then you have your evening. Throughout the week, you very slowly get this dispatch done. You still look for something. You look for it, and the other guys are looking for something. They look for it in the same place that they were looking for it last time. Yesterday, they open and unlock and open shipping containers and close them and open them again. You finally start to get this dispatch going. The motor pool staff stop telling you to fuck off. They inspect the vehicle. Then you prance around to try to find your commander to sign off on the dispatch, your company level commander, a captain. Now, it's also like the whole chain of command thing. It's like the biggest fucking deal if you try to talk to them for something they like want you to do, to include these like signatures. So you basically have to very carefully approach, ask them to sign it, or drop it off in the mailbox outside their office. And lo and behold, they're never fucking there. You can never find them. You can't text them directly to ask them where they are. You can't call them to ask them where they are. You can't do any of that. You just sort of have to show up to their office and hope they're there. And then sometimes you ask some of the NCOs, your 1 or 2 levels above you, if he's around there, because you can kind of like talk at least like 1 or 2 levels in between. So they can talk to him more than you can talk to him. And you can talk to them more than you could talk to him, the commander. So they finally sign off by maybe like Thursday. Friday's the big day. It's always usually an early release by like 3 p.m. or something. Your company, or excuse me, your battalion meets up somewhere to do some kind of weekly announcement or something. And you finally get this dispatch usually done in the morning. You do it, you get the sign off, you drop off the papers again for the commander to sign off again that it was done, whatever. And then you do this every fucking week. That was my entire 3 years. Now, I'm sure some cope theorist is going to have some other experience or something like that, or some other version of this, but inevitably, it's always this. You're a glorified errand and chore boy. That's your daily life. And why? What does this mean? What does this intimate for the competence of the military? You're not doing challenging things all day. You're not getting better. You're not getting stronger. You're not training anything. You're not evaluating. You're not even learning like military history or something or whatever. You're not fucking doing anything that requires significant competence all day. And you're not really subject to significant challenge. And let's just examine some incidents from history about the military here. So for starters, remember the early 2000s and the 2000 or maybe the mid to late 2000s? Remember those stupid fucking digital blue uniforms for in the middle of the desert? Does that seem like that was a competent decision? Does that seem like that was the decision of the most sophisticated military in the fucking world? Where these guys stuck out like sore thumbs in this stupid fucking blue pattern? Go look up images of, troops from that time. And you see that those fucking uniforms stick out like a sore thumb against the desert backgrounds and the desert buildings and everything. Now, let me also tell you what it was like to operate that remotely piloted vehicle, because you might think that's a smarty pants thing. It's not. It's a fucking rote memory cell checklist. It's like the lowest version of learning and intelligence, and that is rote memory celling. Now, IQ cells love to talk about memory because they're likely rote memory cells, but you're subject to no critical thinking, no analysis, no deductive reasoning, no anything. There's no problem solving. There's fucking none of that. You're a checklist retard. And to the extent that things fuck up, maybe sometimes you have to problem solve, but nobody fucking knows the answer. And including me, I never really knew what was wrong with the system or anything because nobody ever really teaches you that far. All you're really taught is to just be really good at doing the checklist and navigating the fucking software. Now, I said earlier that it doesn't filter many people out. While I was in, there were 3 crashes of the unmanned vehicle in literally fucking Garrison. So not even in a combat zone, in Garrison stateside. 3 fucking crashes. There was one time because somebody misaligned, misplaced, so it has an automatic landing system, but it has to be very precisely placed and calculated and measured, and you have specific tools for it and everything. If that's slightly off, if the runway is like this, but that landing system is off, it's going to guide the vehicle to land, because it pilots it itself to land. It's going to guide it, something like this, instead of directly on the runway. So that happened one time. Another time, it just literally fucking crashed right beside where the roads were on post. I don't even remember what the story was with that one. And I'm pretty sure there was a third one, but I forgot. So let's just call it 2 for now in case anybody wants to cope or something. So that is while I was in. And then just look up old combat footage from these guys. These guys are like, during the Middle Eastern conflict and everything, these guys were stuck in holes, pinned down, whatever. They had no fucking idea where the fire was coming from. The radios are always fucking down, are always fucked up, or always jammed, whatever. And that's not really an indictment of their competence, but that just instructs that you fucking idiots who think it's like Call of Duty have no fucking clue what you're talking about. It's chaotic. Nobody knows what the fuck's going on at any time, and nobody knows where they're even being shot from. This recent Medal of Honor for this chief warrant officer, this helicopter pilot and everything, and it's like, oh, well, he's a badass. And there's this idea that, well, necessarily still the military, since it's something of a filter, it filters for those guys. But, okay, that's like any distribution anywhere. Any distribution anywhere of anybody is going to have its excellence. But the military doesn't really filter for those guys. If anything, like, those guys just sort of show up and stay there. They're just drawn to the military. That's just inherent. That's like in their blood and their DNA. They're just military guys. So the United States military doesn't like fucking filter for these epically epic helicopter pilot type guys with the stoic face on. All right, so that's my main point. That's just standards and competence here, but we got the meat of our thing here because this is going to be an analysis of the actual situation in Iran and about our manufacturing, which is super important. So, but this next point should be short. Let's talk about the actual record of the United States. Some of this ideology, that mythology that the United States is the preeminent military of the world comes from these quippy little platitudes like back-to-back World War champs. Yeah, let's slow down. Remember World War II? What was it? It was everybody against one fucking nation, and that one nation almost won. It wasn't like a decisive victory. It wasn't the United States entered the conflict and it was instantly over. I guess it kind of was because it was D-Day, and D-Day was 1944, right? But it took the United States in addition to all the other great powers of the world combined to defeat Germany there. So it's not like the United States was heckarino freaking awesome, based, and freaking so tough and epically epic that they overwhelmed Germany like by themselves. If Germany beat Britain, France, and Russia to an extent for the time that they did, they most certainly could have fucking beaten the United States one-on-one. Isn't that your whole gay little shtick? You know, all of you tough guys that want like all this honor fights and all of this stuff. Same goes for World War One. World War One, the proverb about World War One is that it was a stalemate or something. It actually really fucking wasn't. Germany was about to win, or Germany at the very least could have held their lines. But of course, the United States entered, and that changed the trajectory. But that only changed the trajectory not because the United States is some beast or something. It's because it's another, it's another great power entering the conflict. Now, after World War One and World War Two, Vietnam, it's not some kind of decisive victory. We lost to retards there, essentially. Retards setting fucking booby traps. And it was complicated, and it was guerrilla warfare and everything. And isn't that such a grand irony? Because that's how the American military won the American Revolutionary War, was guerrilla warfare. Now, I think the most instructive example is the War on Terror. We were there for 20 years. Does that sound like an epically epic military that BTFOs the whole region? Totally, utterly humiliates the whole region and fends off against guerrillas and enacts every goal the United States had for the region? No. Now, some people might cope and say, oh, well, Iraq, we totally, I should stop using the internet terminology with the BTFO. I've been trying to vocab max, but I haven't had a chance to study it much right now, so. But, yeah, epically epic owning Iraq is another low IQ relativity thing. Where, sure, you can epically epic own Iraq, but that does not imply you're in the category of excellence. I mean, it's literally Iraq at the time, which was already worn down from its wars with Iran. I mean, isn't this is sort of a theme that's coming up with the current conflict with Iran? It's like Schrodinger's based racist. Iran poses a significant threat to the world, but simultaneously it's totally insignificant and easily defeated by the U.S. epically epic military might. The Iraq thing, taking pride in defeating Iraq, is like invading Australia when it was Aboriginals now, Aboriginals with their bows and arrows. It's like weighing 100 pounds more than somebody and beating their ass. It's like being 18 years old and like beating up one of the 13-year-old freshmen or something. That's not like a place of pride. That does not imply categorical excellence just because it's relatively excellent. But if you have a low IQ, you don't understand that. And if you're homoerotic for the United States military, you won't get that. All right. Here is our big important, relevant analysis to the United States and Iran. So, what is the preeminent economic problem of the United States? We have this imagery of the United States being some kind of economic powerhouse because of homoerotic capitalism. Homoerotic capitalism has like led to its inevitable consequences, which is a outsourcing, a hysterical outsourcing of anything and everything to other nations, particularly small item manufacturing and services and financialization. And I know it sounds gay and libtarded, but it really is a widening of the gap between the poor and the rich. That's inevitably what happens with this degree of homoerotic capitalism. I am a capitalist. I'm not fond of gay handout type people that a lot of these fucking white nationalists have become. But that is the inevitable consequence. And so what we have is diminished manufacturing capability. We still have it and it still exists, but small item manufacturing that we overlook is a necessary component of war. Things like bullets, clothing, food, equipment. Our ability to produce these things is significantly diminished in favor of these like sophisticated systems and all of this stuff. This means that we cannot sustain a protracted conflict against a parity power or a mid-level power that has some kind of edge on us. All of our manufacturing has been outsourced to China, and so your homoeroticism about the capitalism and about manufacturing power in the United States is not real. Stand by on, I don't know, the transgender question is like unrelated. Is this what it's like to have comments that are just like unrelated? But I suppose I appreciate the engagement here. So this manufacturing capability is, now let's talk about, too, there's this feelsy goodsy about the military because we have some kind of advanced scientific, sophisticated research into weaponry. Now, you can ooh and ah about all the toys all you want. There's a problem with these toys. They take forever to build, forever to develop, and just their munitions alone are significantly expensive. And their munitions take a long time to manufacture. Now, some people still say, well, it's that we have this spending power. Most of the military spending is on like gay programs, on things like, the Army famously has something called sexual harassment, assault, something prevention program. Now, I shouldn't be, that's gay or something like that, but they spend probably billions on that. And you have to do the trainings and these sorts of things. They also allow themselves, this is a problem, the military doesn't really do a good job of negotiating with suppliers and all of that, so suppliers upcharge them. So that's one of the reasons why the spending is so high, because they know they could get away with telling General Fuckface that whatever, these systems cost hundreds of millions of dollars and they cost whatever, let's say hundreds of thousands of dollars to manufacture, produce, etc. So now let's also think about the United States is pulling a classic empire and a classic Roman thing, and that is that we're spread too thin. We have a presence all over the globe, which is force projection. That's cool and great and all, but inevitably, this isn't fucking Call of Duty. You do run out of ammo. You can't just walk over a dead body and pick up ammo. You can't just, just, click L3 to run and go to another spot or something like that. They're all stationed all over the globe, and it's a force projection or something like that, sure, but it's not exactly like these are significantly well-built installations and all of that, and they all cost money to keep afloat and maintain and everything like that. And so we're spread too thin, and we're engaged in several conflicts now, essentially, with that force posturing. China and Taiwan, Ukraine and Russia. We spend way too much money over there. We send way too much equipment. Sending equipment is worse than sending money, because sending equipment means that we have these items that might have taken months to manufacture that we sent over there that necessarily depletes our capabilities. So, the super epic computer systems, they have the freaking epic targeting. This isn't a movie fucking LARP. Like, I know it feels really good to watch the movie LARPs about target acquired, with the lights of the screens and all this stuff, and the president walking into the situation room and being like, and got all these cameras up and watching the SEAL Team 6 do their thing and all that. Nice LARP, but that's not how it actually fucking looks. So, now what is the problem when applying this to Iran? Iran uses cheap, easily manufactured drones and missiles, sometimes not even in the tens of thousands of dollars to manufacture. They could produce up to, let's see, I wrote it down, 200 to 300 of some of these kamikaze drones, and some of the ballistic missiles, they could produce roughly 50 to 100 per month. Now, the U.S., to counter these, we're using THAAD, Patriot, and SM-3 systems. Now, let's take a look at some of these costs. The THAAD system itself costs roughly $1.25 billion. So if one of those gets blown up, we're fucked. It costs roughly $12 million to $15 million for every missile, and if we were to be wiped out of our stock right now, it would take roughly 5 to 8 years to rebuild our current stock. The Patriot missile systems is $7 million per shot, $360 million per system, and 2.5 years to, I think I put, to manufacture, to replenish our supply. The SM-3 missile that is launched off of naval vessels, it's $28 million per shot. And so think about this comparison, and think about Iran. If Iran's been nuclearly hedging, Iran is also very well prepared for this day, for these fights, especially after last year. And they had a year to just pump them up. And this is during normal non-war time. So you can imagine they converted to a total war economy on this stuff, essentially. And now these missile defense systems that we have are much more expensive, much more harder to shoot, and they're easily overwhelmed. Iran could send hundreds. We could, Freudian slip. Iran could send hundreds of these drones to overwhelm these systems, and as it stands, I think last I heard the number is roughly 14% are getting through missile defense systems. That includes ballistic missiles and drones, I presume. So just think, they send 100 missiles, 14 of them are getting through. How many do you think it takes to blow up one of these systems where they stand? 2, 3, whatever, at the very least incapacitates them. And what's the problem with that? The problem is it'll take Iran a month to replace that drone, and it'll take you years to replace that THAAD system. Or months or whatever. I shouldn't say years. I shouldn't be too dramatic here. So this is a significant problem of this war. Iran all it takes is for Iran to just outlast the United States a little bit, and it very well can, given this manufacturing discrepancy. The United States has hedged a little bit too much on these short, bursty conflicts, these short operations like Venezuela, and has relied too heavily on its sophisticated weaponry, but is totally unprepared for a protracted conflict. So all Iran has to do has to outlast the United States' ammo. And I've seen some allies, some friends who are anti this war saying that the United States has asked for munitions already, but if not now, it will be soon. And what does that entail? What does that entail politically? The United States then has two options. I mean, really only the United States is always going to take this into a ground invasion because you don't have a regime change. And, if the airstrikes didn't work last time, even though they said they worked to incapacitate Iran's nuclear capability, it most certainly didn't work for the first time. So what's the last option? What's the last resort? Is a ground invasion. Now, a ground invasion will probably send the United States over the edge of beating Iran, whether it's more people or something like that, but it's not going to be won easily. Iran isn't a small, retarded Afghani country. A lot of you idiots think this. It's necessarily a developed country if it has nuclear weaponry. And, Schrodinger's based fascist again. How is it that Iran is so threatening but also underwhelming militarily? So it has a 1 million man army. And the United States, I think, has 1 million active and like 2 million reservists or something like that. So Now, numerically, sure, you might, if you're an idiot, you think numbers there and everything. But the terrain in Iran is rough. There's going to be all sorts of problems. The United States historically has problems with ground invasions in the Middle East. But this is the only way to arrive at regime change. Now, otherwise, the United States backs out upon this munition problem happening. If the United States backs out, what kind of precedent does that set for the global stage? The United States now has a reputation for losing militarily, provided you have some kind of smart advantage like this manufacturing discrepancy. Now, you fucking dorks didn't think of this because you think it's Call of Duty and you don't think about real world supply lines, manufacturing. You don't think about how soldiers need fucking water and food all day while they're out there. Marines, sailors, airmen. So, with the United States potentially backing out and retreating, now China and Russia, it almost invites aggression with China and Russia twofold. Firstly, if Iran could beat the United States back and the United States is wounded and licking its wounds, China and Russia can actually take the opportunity to facilitate their interests, whether that's in Ukraine or Taiwan, or maybe even invading the United States. I don't think that'll ever happen. That's just kind of gay. This gay thing of thinking they're just heckin' big fat beanies that want to malevolently invade is gay cope. But nevertheless, it invites aggression that way. And it invites middle powers, because this is the new Cold War, middle powers to align themselves with China and Russia, because now the United States doesn't really have much to offer. It doesn't have manufacturing to offer. It doesn't have economics to offer. Its only hedge for middle powers was military help and weaponry and protection. But clearly, that sets the precedent for middle powers to say, well, hang on, they fucking lost to Iran, so why should I try to get their military equipment or get their military help? Middle powers are the new Cold War. What's more, the United States has alienated middle powers with its rhetoric on the negotiations with Iran, betraying Iran, proudly touting about, it was all a lie, it was all a cope, it was all an excuse, it was all just half-assed trying to fool Iran. So now every middle fucking power can't trust the United States on any of its word. But if you're a fucking idiot and you want to be a faggot little tough guy and play tough guy games and parasocially identify with Trump, you don't think of that because you're a fucking idiot and you're a fat, lazy, indulgent, pussified, disgusting, neurotransmitter slave pig. And you cope with that by ameliorating your guilt by over-identifying with Trump and these tough guy theatrics. So this is going to alienate middle power significantly to that end, because we're not going to withstand the manufacturing of Iran. And we lied to Iran and made a fool of Iran and coped about the negotiation. The whole fucking world saw this coming, because the whole world knows now that the United States belongs to Israel and not the other way around. So, all right. That was actually sort of my conclusion there. The point, well, there's sort of a point to this, but now let's examine this contemptible parasocial thing with the military. I already sort of elucidated the psychological mechanisms, but how do people reason this? Because this is obviously unreasonable. Oh, the military's tough. I feel like a tough guy because the military, therefore I'm tough, or whatever. The more I, emotionally support the military, the more I'm like the military, the more of a friend or relatable I am to the military. The more relatable I am to the military, well, that must mean we have things in common. I'm just going to arbitrarily insert that the things we have in common are that I'm disciplined and cool and emotionally resilient and tough like them. They also use this justification of, well, American military, American citizen. Duh. Therefore, we're like the same. Now, part of that stems from this hunter-gatherer mammal brain thing of our mammal brains are always looking for relatability, are always looking for common ground. And so when we're both military or we're both American, even though we know that doesn't fucking rationally make sense, our mammal brain tells us, well, we're like them. And since that feels like we're like them, that's how they sort of pseudo-rationalize, oh, I must be like them. That's how they feel the rationalization that they're as tough and as resilient as these people, but it's not a real rationalization. It is a felt rationalization from evolved heuristics in the brain. So, they're American, I'm American, well, and the American military is super tough, which must mean there's some kind of toughness in the American military or the American conscious, collective unconscious. I'm American, therefore that's in my collective unconscious. Therefore, I'm a tough guy. And just even thinking about it, where did we get this idea? Oh, because of Go Army Strong commercials and Fox News, and everyone always just says the military's tough, but nobody has a reason. Nobody has an argument to make for that. I gotta hold her down too, because she's gonna keep nudging. This feels so classless, but it also feels classless to get up and kick her out. So, and like Awa, oh, do you have veterans had Awa? They have to talk about the aura. That's another hunter-gatherer feels the heuristic thing. If somebody has aura, communicates this body language, our brain sort of presumes that that person gets that from truth, rating entirely on their little baby feelsy brain, despite LARPing that they're so transcendent and so above their feelings and so tough and resilient. You're actually fucking not if your entire decision-making process lies in these sorts of feelings, these hunter-gatherer feelings. I'll say, too, where do we even get the idea that that's so tough? Well, there's the emotional resilience of withstanding combat or something like that. But there's also this dork fucking faggoty little thing where they heard somewhere that girls like protectorate men. So they want to get fucking pussy and get good boy pets from women. These dorks elaborately LARP like some kind of protectorate of the land types. And, oh, yeah, I'm rooting for the military because I'm a fellow protectorate of the land. And if I'm a protectorate of the land, I'm a protectorate of the women. And, oh, look, women, I'm protecting you. Therefore, have sex with me. It's a combination of this felt transactionalism, but also this sexual advertisement, this sort of advertisement. Oh, look at me. I feel very protective. Therefore, you, woman, can infer that I'm going to be protective or protect you. So there's your evidence for why you should fuck me. These dorks also get off to this idea of this masculinity alignment thing of pretending like they're fucking killers, and that's masculine because it's this pseudo emotional lack of compassion thing. So they all sort of figured out, and latently or through reading their gay little politics, that women's ethics is compassion and empathy and this sort of thing. So to ensure that they're categorically not that, they're like, I like killing people, this sort of thing. And they linearly overcompensate with that as a fear hedge, as a hedge of the risk of the other category. And they feel that way because they're not grounded, and they're not grounded because they don't align with themselves. They don't know when or under what circumstances they would get violent or something like that, and they don't know what's really worth fighting for, so they just need to operate on fear. Their fear is the only thing telling them how to be a heckin' freaking cool guy killer type. And their fear heuristically tells them, well, just operate outside that category at all costs. So the further you tell yourself you're or LARP that you're a tough guy with this killing thing, the better. That's the only grounding rule that they have with this parasocial tough guy identification. And I'll just say too, this is a fucking problem with the propagandization, the Fox News and all that. Let me explain something to you. It sounds boomer, but I guess it has to be explained. The movie doesn't fucking continue for the person that dies. It's not like a fucking movie where somebody dies and it's dramatic and they're bleeding out and everyone, they don't get to see everyone miss them. They don't get to see that they're a hero. They don't get to see their own funeral and everyone's sort of processing it, and they don't just fucking appear in front of them and get to watch that. They're fucking dead. They're dead. They're dead. They're dead. Screen black. As a matter of fact, the screen doesn't even fucking go black. They just stop existing. Nobody's going to fucking, they're not going to feel honored. They're not going to feel like they lived their life with purpose. They're not going to feel like they gave their life to something meaningful. They're just going to fucking die. Idiot. And these are young people that are fucking stupid, and I hate them, but they don't deserve that. The whole shtick, what is it? It was Department of Defense. We have to LARP and call it Department of War now, but it's Department of Defense. That means defending our interests. So now there's the later argument we'll get to in this series about whether the Iran war is in our interests. But Department of Defense, what does that mean? That means, well, either we die because we've run out of resources or land or something, or we die fighting to try to get it back. That's the circumstance under which you fight. I know some of you like to LARP and, oh, well, that's gay because that's letting yourself get backed into a corner. That's pacifist or something. No, it's being a fucking adult. And it's placing that as the last resort because people fucking die. That's fucking it. Young people die. That's fucking it. It's not a fucking movie. They don't see that they get posthumously promoted. They don't see that they get the posthumous Medal of Honor. That Medal of Honor gets given to their family. They get a couple $1,000 a month. That fucking family doesn't give a fuck. That family has to spend the rest of their life, wondering if they could have convinced their young idiot believing the faggoty propaganda to not join. It could have saved their life. That sort of gets into my point here because what is my point? Am I anti-American? Hey, faggots who were saying I'm not American. Fuck you, idiot. This idea that you have to, if you're not American, if you're not a sycophant for the military, is exactly the kind of emotionalism that politicians and Israel has taken advantage of to facilitate their homoerotic regime change wars. And that's what's gotten thousands killed in the war on terror in Iraq, Afghanistan, all these sorts of operations in the Middle East. This kind of homoeroticism where you're a fucking faggot and you want to feel like a tough guy at the price of other people's lives is the problem and the point. And, I don't want the United States to lose. I don't want any more soldiers to die, but simultaneously, what's it going to take for you fucking faggots, pussies, playing these games, masquerading as tough to fucking get it? Categorically voting Republican and categorically identifying with Trump in the military perpetually at the cost of fucking lives so you could feel like a tough guy. When are you going to fucking get it that you got to grow the fuck up? That's my point. This is what it means to be rational, to rationally analyze what's going on. And God only knows how this is going to go. China's not involved yet, but let's suppose Iran does outlast the United States on munitions. How delightful would it be for China to intervene to really fucking hammer the United States back unexpectedly? This perpetual voting right-wing thing, voting for Democrats with R next to their name is not a vote for yourself. R next to their name doesn't imply, R-Naboo is like the joke, doesn't imply that they're going to facilitate your interests. As evident with this fucking war. So stop fucking coping and stop identifying with them. I'll give you a little secret. You can be a tough guy without being pro-Trump. You know how you do that? You shut your faggoty little mouth and actually go to the gym. Not drink raw milk. Not fucking spurg about seed oils. Not half-ass 3 times a week because girls don't like when you're too big. Go to the fucking gym for real if you want to be such a tough guy. And crazy concept, you'll be able to be a tough guy without fucking being a Trump fucking homo fucking dick sucker. This is costing lives. This is costing American empire. This is costing American dominance. This is costing American culture. This is the downfall of our country. And I'm not fond of that, but simultaneously, like, people have been joking. You know what? They are right. You people are goyim. It's like, I'm borderline gonna fucking sign up to be a Shabbos goy because of this. Because you fucking goyim are going to get ruled and subjugated because you had to vote for these homoerotic regime change wars to feel like a tough guy at the expense of lives. There's the lives argument. There's the interest argument that we'll see later on. And there is the argument of wasting all of our money and resources and depleting our military capacity over fucking nothing and losing out of hubris, losing out of overconfidence. Voting Republican isn't fucking tough. Cheering on war and fucking masturbating to it isn't fucking tough. You want to be tough, you have one fucking option, and that's to align yourself with who you want to be and subject yourself to metabolic effort. Be fucking better. Read, write, fucking do this, content, work out, educate yourself, pursue a career, make money, financialize, what the fuck ever. Just do something that's not a cope rationalization for your iniquities and inadequacies. Because otherwise, you're going to be a fucking idiot and you're going to cost all of us, you're going to cost young people their lives, you're going to cost our economy and our country. So, I think that's my final statement there. So, that's part one of the Iran Cope Watch by Marchese Methods here. Like, subscribe, retweet, and everything. Coaching and base therapy available at marchesemethods.com. DM me for my Discord, $5 a month. Or email me, marchesemethods@proton.me. My super chat link is in the description for the YouTube and Rumble stream. And then on X, you can also use the tip icon on the right-hand side. It looks like a little bag of money or something. I take Cash App and Bitcoin. So thank you so much, and I will see you next time. Not sure if it'll be tomorrow or the following day or whatever. I'll try to keep this relatively consistent. I feel like I have a good rhythm here with the notes and everything. So I'll see you for the next one. Let's see. What do I want to do for the next one? I think I want to do the pseudo-realpolitik. Politique. I've read that word before, so I know it's a real word, but I don't know how it's pronounced. I've never heard of it. Or I could do the death to America ignorance, non-nuclear proliferation. So let me know. Comment or like, subscribe, or something like that.